Mr. Speaker, I understand the Prime Minister will be delivering a speech later today setting out his plan for change. I must say I'm delighted to hear this, I'm sure we all are, that the government is at last adopting a plan and that it is trying to change. Because, as we have so often noted at Business Questions, the government's first 5 months have been a festival. No, a carnival, a supermarket sweep, fill your boots, all-you-can-eat blunderfest of delay and incompetence. Mr. Speaker, you more than any member of this House will be aware that the effective functioning of Parliament rests on its ability to hold ministers to account. That has been true since its origins in the 13th century and arguably even before that. And as you will know, this practice of seeking reasons and explanations for official actions, whether they be the passage of bills or the raising of taxation, is not some useful add-on or afterthought. It is absolutely foundational to the whole idea of Parliament as a deliberative assembly. So I'm sure you will understand my disappointment that the Leader of the House has been so persistently unwilling to answer or even to address the very simple questions which I have been putting to her in recent weeks. On November the 14th, I drew attention to the government's incompetence in combining 3 measures at the same time on national insurance and the minimum wage in a way that drastically raises the cost of hiring entry-level staff, and I asked for an assessment of the total impact of these measures. I'm afraid the Leader's response was to blame the previous government and talk about employers who will pay no additional national insurance, a completely different group and quite irrelevant to the question asked. November 21st, I again highlighted this problem and got the same response, to blame the last government and change the subject. But I also extended my concern about government incompetence to include its decision to bring forward the clean energy commitment from 2035 to 2030 and highlighted a vast array of public and official worries about whether this was either achievable or financially viable. In response, I'm sorry to say, again, the Leader did not engage with either of these questions. Instead, she accused me of political opportunism. And last week, we saw the same thing once more. For the 3rd time, I raised the question of Labour's triple whammy in combining changes to national insurance rates and thresholds with changes to the minimum wage. This time, the Leader did not simply duck the question and change the subject. She also gave me the benefit of a little homily on the duties of the opposition. And it is true that the duties of the opposition are a topic on which, unlike the duties of government, she has built up considerable expertise over more than a decade. But the real point is this, Mr. Speaker. For a month now, I have been asking some basic questions and put them to the Leader of the House about the incompetence of this government. Many different responses were open to her. She could have said, well, I agree with you. Or she could have said, I don't know, I will look into it, I will reply to you, I will ask a ministerial colleague to investigate and respond, I will come back to the House with a proper account. But on no occasion has she bothered to give any kind of proper answer at all. Instead, and I fear the same will be true this week, the Leader's approach has been to change the subject, attack the previous government rather than defend the record of her own government, which is the whole point of these exchanges. Let us see what she says when she stands up shortly. If the government had made a decent start, of course, she might want to talk about that. But the truth is the government has made a dreadful start. It's been beset by petty scandals from the beginning. It's destroyed business confidence through a budget that's visibly unravelling before our eyes. And only this week, it's lost a cabinet minister to new revelations about a criminal conviction for fraud. Little wonder the Prime Minister wants a reset. So let me say this, Mr. Speaker. The Leader's unwillingness to engage, to recognise and to respond to questions is arguably more important than any aspect of policy, because it strikes at the heart of the very idea of our parliamentary democracy. It is a discourtesy. In fact, I would suggest possibly even an insult to you, Mr. Speaker, to all our colleagues and their constituents and to this House. It's made worse because the Leader is responsible for parliamentary business and procedure and should, one might think, set an example of openness. And it's worse still for 2 further reasons, because she herself has so often called for transparency from ministers, and because a failure to be accountable is itself a breach of the rules of this House, of the Nolan Principles and of the Ministerial Code of Conduct. That's quite a combination. So let me say this. Let me ask the Right Honourable Lady now whether she plans to continue as she has been doing, or whether she will change this unfortunate habit and start to engage with the serious questions I have been asking.
Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, it's another week and another misjudged and confused contribution from the shadow leader. You know, he really does need to work out what their strategy for opposition is here. You know, tell the country they've never had it so good when they were in, or learn from defeat and accept that they got things wrong. And I might gently advise that they should listen to the voters. because acting as if they did nothing wrong and accepting no responsibility won't do them any good at all. And if he doesn't want to take my advice, Mr. Speaker, perhaps he should listen to his own, because he said they suffered from, and I quote, many disastrous recent failures in policy and leadership. I agree. He said we had inherited a struggling economy and anaemic growth. I agree with that too. I also agreed with him when he was a champion of net zero, and he was right when he was the Financial Secretary to the Treasury to care about economic stability. I agreed with him. Does he still agree with him? Because I'm not quite sure.
Probably not.
And he asked some questions about scrutiny of legislation and debate. But I will gently remind him we have had many debates on the finance bill, many debates on the budget. We've got the bill before us on the national insurance contribution coming back to us next week and before Christmas. And I have to remind him yet again, I'm afraid, that he was the Financial Secretary to the Treasury when the national insurance contributions were raised not just on business but on workers as well, when he said that they were a thoroughly conservative thing to do. And he was also a Treasury Minister when the minimum wage was raised. So he's had plenty of time to come to this House and explain why he thought that was OK then, but it's not OK now. And he does raise the economy here today. I can see he's raising that. He failed to mention one of the big economic forecasts out this week from the OECD, which shows that the UK is now forecast to be the fastest growing European economy in the G7 over the next 3 years. He didn't mention that when he was talking about it. And we've always been clear that growth only matters when ordinary people right round the country feel better off and see public services improve. And that's the difference between our economic plans and his. We've got a plan for change. They have yet to change. They have yet to learn their own lessons. And we've got some clear outcomes we're laying out today about how we're going to deliver. He might not like them because they failed on all of their measures, which is why they lost the election. And while he and the rest of his party shout from the sidelines, trying to rewrite history, we are delivering the real change the public voted for.
Yeah. Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend knows on occasion this House can come to agreement about key pieces of legislation